want to welcome those of you who are watching online. If you have a Bible, go ahead and open to 1 Chronicles chapter 10, even though we will look at about 9 verses from chapter 9. Today's discussion will be about King Saul, and we'll explain why King Saul is the transition into a very long look at King David, which begins in 1 Chronicles 10 and runs through the rest of 1 Chronicles. Guys, I'm really impressed that you are hanging in there with us in Chronicles. We finished the tough part, and now we're getting into the narrative, into the stories of Chronicles. And I think it's going to be quite a bit easier. When we come back again, by the way, January 6th is when we'll meet again. Easy date to remember. What happened on January 6th? I know. No, that's Epiphany. I wasn't necessarily talking about what happened in Washington, D.C., but the 12 days of Christmas begin on Christmas Day. And January 6th is 12 days after Christmas. And that is when, Tom, you were taught growing up as a Catholic that the wise men bowed before the Savior and saw Him as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So that's the next time that we will meet. But you've hung in there. Now, Tim asked me a question this morning that I did not have an answer to. So after we read our text, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to begin reading the text at the start. We'll go through chapter 10. I will answer Tim's question by showing you how to do some research on large language models, artificial intelligence. This is not new to many of you, of course, but for those of you who don't know how to do it, I'm telling you, LLMs, large language models, can be used for extraordinary good. Don't let people scare you away from AI. It's not the mark of the beast. It is a tool that can be used for great Bible study, and I'll show you how. So let's start reading in 1 Chronicles 9, verse 35. And let me say just a word about these 9 verses from 35 through 44, actually 10. They are almost identical to 1 Chronicles 8, verses 33 through 40. In fact, all you have to do is turn one page over in your Bible and look at 1 Chronicles 8, 33 through 40. It's almost identical to what we're about to read. So people might ask the question, why is it repeated? And here's what I will say to you. The life of Saul is extraordinarily complicated. And if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 9, 1 Samuel chapter 9, through the end of that book, you have all the stories of Saul's life. Many colorful stories. But here in Chronicles, Saul is almost like a transition to King David. And when we finish reading, you'll understand that the chronicler, who I believe to be Ezra, is teaching the history of Israel to the Jews who are returning to Canaan after the Babylonian exile. And notice, he glosses over Saul. Saul is like a transitional figure, and then he zeroes in on David. Why? Because the Messiah is going to come from the lineage of David. The hope that the chronicler is giving the Jews is through David. So this chapter that we're about to read with the genealogy in chapter 9, the end of that chapter. All about Saul is one chapter summarizing his life. That's it. So let's read. Verse 35. In Gibeon Jael, the father of Gibeon lived. By the way, in Israel, names of cities were taken after the names of the settlers. That happened 2,500 years ago. And by the way, it happened in Oklahoma, here, where we live, in 1893. For example, anybody want to take a guess why Kremlin is named Kremlin? Because they were all Russian who settled there. And they named it after their home, Kremlin. Anybody want to guess why Mino was named Mino? Yeah, they were all Mennonites. And it was in honor of Mino Simon, their founder. Loyal, Oklahoma, it wasn't Loyal at first. It was a German city settled by Germans. But in World War I, when we began fighting the Germans, they decided they better change the name of their city. So they changed it to Loyal. Okay? So Gibeon here was named after Gibeon, who founded it. His wife's name was Maacah, and his firstborn son was Abdon. And then he had other sons, Zur, Kish. By the way, remember, Kish is the father of Saul. Baal, Ner, Nadab, Gedor, Ahiah, Zechariah, and Mikloth. Mikloth became the father of Shemayim, and they also lived with their relatives in Jerusalem, opposite their other relatives. Ner became the father of Kish. Kish became the father of Jonathan. By the way, Kish became the father of Saul. Saul became the father of Jonathan. Now notice, Kish is the father of Saul. But do you see, look up there at verse 36. This Kish, in verse 36, is the brother of Ner. So Ner had a son that he named in honor of his brother. So there's two Kishes here. 36, Kish is the uncle of Saul. 39, Kish is the father of Saul. In fact, he would be the great uncle in verse 36. So let's go on. Verse 39, Ner became the father of Kish. Kish became the father of Saul. Saul became the father of Jonathan. And then here are the names of his other boys, of Saul's boys. Malchishua, Abinadab, and Eshbaal. By the way, we'll see this here in just a moment. Those four boys all died the same day as their father, Saul. All killed by the Philistines. Now Saul was wounded, but when he saw his boys were dead, he fell on his sword. You read about this in the book of Samuel. And then the Philistines, I'll show you a picture in just a moment, took the bodies of these boys, decapitated Saul's head, and took the head of Saul and put it at the temple of Dagon on top of Beth Shan, a hill. And when we go to Israel, we will take you up to that hill. And then a great story is in Samuel of some loyal subjects of Israel who had been rescued by Saul when an enemy had attacked them. Men from Jabesh Gilead, in a secret mission at night, came to that hill and took down the bodies of these boys and the head of Saul and gave the family of Saul a proper burial. But let me ask you a question. If the four sons of Saul are killed on the same day as the king of Israel, who's going to be the next king?
Well, David was already king. I mean, they'd already appointed him.
He'd been anointed by Samuel.
He'd been anointed by Samuel, but in kingship, who follows the king when the king?
Was supposed to.
Yeah, all his sons are killed. And in the providence of God, here comes David. So the lineage of the kingdom of Israel changes from Saul, who was a Benjamite, to David, who was a Judahite. And from the time of David until Christ, remember, he is called Son of David. Jesus Christ is called Son of David. Remember the blind beggar on the road to Jerusalem from Jericho? By the way, that's the same road of the Good Samaritan. We'll stop at the Samaritan end. The blind beggar shouted out, Son of David, have mercy on me. Now, what does the title Son of David mean? Anybody?
That you're tied to Abraham?
Yeah. Son of David, you're tied to the kingship. When you call Jesus Son of David, you're calling him king. All right, let's go on.
In answer to your question, Mephibosheth should have become king.
Very good. Now you're stealing my thunder.
They got beat.
Because Tim asked the question, why is Mephibosheth not mentioned in this text? And we're going to come back. Who is Mephibosheth? He is the son of Jonathan. So if the sons are killed, then it's that firstborn grandson that becomes king. But do you remember the story of Mephibosheth? Yeah. When the Philistines were attacking the city where he lived, his nurse picked him up and ran him out of the house, and she fell. And the baby in her arms fell with her and broke his spine. And he became a cripple. So the question that Tim asked is, why is Mephibosheth not mentioned? We'll answer that. Howard.
Well, in 2 Samuel 2, it talks about another son of Saul, not Mephibosheth, but Ishbosheth. And they had 7 years of civil war there. And Abner, son of Ner, again, you just mentioned,
Yes.
The head of the army went to make Ishbosheth, but then we got an argument about whose wife is whose, and so Abner turned and gave it to David.
You got it, Howard. So basically, I think Ronnie nailed it. There could have been other legitimate heirs to the throne, but it was God's intention to switch it from Saul and his lineage to David. All right, let's keep going. Verse 40. The son of Jonathan was Meribel, and Meribel became the father of Micah. Now this is where Mephibosheth should have been. Why is Mephibosheth not mentioned, but Meribel is? By the way, I think I know the answer without even having to Google it. Meribel is the name of Mephibosheth.
I wondered if that wasn't what it was.
His name is Meribel, but it is changed to Mephibosheth or vice versa. So that is Mephibosheth. Okay? Let's go on. Verse 41. The sons of Micah were Python, Melech, Teriah, and Ahaz. And Ahaz became the father of Jerah, and Jerah became the father of Alemeth, Osmapheth, and Zimri. And Zimri became the father of Mosa, and Mosa became the father of Beniah, and Rephiah his son, Eleazar his son, Azel his son. I think I told you when we studied chapter 9, Motza is the root of the name Mozart. And Mozart, of course, is Jewish, but a lot of the Jews take their names from the Old Testament. Verse 44. Exile had 6 sons whose names are these: Azrikam, Bakura, and Ishmael, and Shariah, and Obadiah, and Hanan. These were the sons of Exile. Now remember, the chronicler is writing this after the Jews have been in exile in Babylon, released by Cyrus in 539 BC, October the 13th, and now the Jews in waves are coming back to Israel to rebuild Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple, and all that. He's writing this after the exile. Why? Remember, these are like land deeds. Because if you've got Benjamites coming back, the land of Benjamin, he's basically saying, these are the people who own the land. And there were battles that they had to take because some neighboring nations had moved into Israel to take over, saying, this is our land now. And so the chronicler is saying, okay, these are the families of the Benjamites. These are the families of the Judaites. These are the families, of the Manassites. And we've been through all those in the first 9 chapters. Now let's come to chapter 10. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. And the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. By the way, this is where Saul died. This is where his boys died. I'll show you a picture of Mount Gilboa in just a moment. The Philistines closely pursued Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle became heavy against Saul, and the archers overtook him, and he was wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, draw your sword and thrust me through with it. Otherwise, these uncircumcised, that means the Philistines, will come and abuse me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. By the way, why would Saul ask his armor-bearer to thrust a sword through him?
He couldn't do it himself.
Correct. Why couldn't he do it himself, according to Jewish theology or law?
Won't get the evidence.
The suicide was the one sin, according to the Jews, that would keep you out of paradise. And that's why that great story of Masada, we'll go up to Masada. When the Romans in 73 AD surround Masada, the Jews had fled to that great mountain. It was the winter palace of Herod. By the way, summer palace of Herod. Beautiful, way up high. And the Jews stayed there for months. And the Romans had to build ramparts to get to them. And it took them a long time. Well, right when they were about to breach the wall at Masada, they drew lots, Tim, for the fathers. And the last guy that drew the lot was the guy that had to commit suicide. All the fathers killed their families, their children. Then they killed one another by the man who'd drawn the lot, killing the men, and then he fell on his sword. The way we know this is because they've discovered the lots on top of Masada in archaeology, and it's in their museum. And there was a wife, a mother, with her 2 kids that hid in a drainage bin. And nobody's sure why. Maybe she was a widow, but she hid and she escaped. Josephus, who was with the Roman soldiers, found this woman and interviewed her, and she explained what happened. And I think I've told you before, but it's worth repeating for some of you who are new. One time we were in Masada, some of you might have been with us, when all of these helicopters, I want to say Chinook, I'm not sure, but I mean they were powerful helicopters. 6 of them all came and landed. And I mean, dust is going everywhere. And soldiers get out, IDF soldiers, they all stand in line. I turned to Uval, who was a former colonel for IDF, and he'll be our guide next year. I said, Uval, what is this? He said, if you're in special forces for Israel, you swear your allegiance by coming to the top of Masada, raise your right hand, repeat an oath, and then close your oath with these words: no more Masada. Meaning, we will never take our lives before our enemy. We will take their lives. And if you ever wonder why Israel is tough as nails, tough as nails is because they've been through a history of war and they know what it means to fight. All right, let's go on. Therefore Saul took his sword and fell on it. Verse 4. Verse 5. When his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he likewise fell on his sword and died. Thus Saul died with his 3 sons, and all those of his house died together. Verse 7. When all the men of Israel who were in the valley saw that they had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook their cities and fled. And the Philistines came and lived in those cities. By the way, I'll show you the cities in just a moment. And when you start reading about David being king of Israel, remember his great fights were against the Philistines. Who's the most well-known Philistine? Goliath from Gath, a Philistine city. But what you've got here are the Philistines encroaching on the cities of Israel. Verse 8. It came about the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. So they stripped Saul and took his head and his armor and sent messengers around the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to their idols and to their people. The idols of the Philistines were Dagon, the fish god. Some people say Dagon. And there's a great story, by the way, of the Ark of the Covenant being captured by the Philistines, and they take it into the temple of Dagon, the fish god. And do you remember? It's a body of a fish, hands and feet of a man, and head of a man, but he's the fish god because the Philistines were coastal people, and they worshiped the god who would give them fish. What happened to the statue the next morning? Huh? You got it, Howard. Bill, you got it. The hands were gone. The head was decapitated. The body was lying on the ground. There seems, Tim, to be a parallel here between what happened to Saul and what happened to the god Dagon. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. Verse 7. Or we read that, verse 8. Okay, let's do verse 8 again. Thanks, Ronnie. It came about the next day when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. So they stripped him and took his head and his armor and sent messengers around the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to their idols and to the people. Verse 10. They put his armor in the house of their gods, fastened his head in the house of Dagon. There it is right there. And I'll show you exactly where that is in a moment. Verse 11. When all Jabesh Gilead, when all of Jabesh Gilead heard all that the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men of Jabesh Gilead, these are Israeli men, arose and took away the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons and brought them to Jabesh. And there they buried their bones under the oak in Jabesh. And they fasted 7 days. Now here is the transitional phrase. So Saul died for his trespass, which he committed against Yahweh, because of the word of Yahweh, which he did not keep, and also because he asked counsel of a medium, a witch, the witch of Endor, making inquiry of the witch, and he did not inquire of Yahweh. Therefore, he, that is Yahweh, killed him and turned the kingdom to David, the son of Jesse. Now, before we take your questions and take a look, I want you to turn over to 1 Samuel 13. 1 Samuel 13. I'm just going to read 2 verses for you, which tells you about the disobedience of Saul. By the way, this is really the beginning of his ministry. Well, let me show you something in verse 1. 1 Samuel 13, verse 1. Saul was 30 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned. How many of your translations say 2 years? 1, 2. What are you reading from, Matt?
ESV.
ESV.
Mine says he was 40 years old and reigned
42 years. Mine says 42 years. 42.
Okay, there we go. Guys, this is probably the most controversial chronological verse in the Old Testament. Let me see if I can't help you understand what's happened. In the ancient manuscripts from which scribes copied the scroll of Samuel, the oldest manuscripts had a glitch in them. It couldn't be read. People weren't sure what it said. It looked like the number 2. So, if that's the case, then Saul was 30 years old and he reigned 2 years over Israel. But that contradicts what Paul, the apostle, said in his message in Acts 13, when he said Saul reigned 40 years. So, some translations take the word 40, and by the way, the NASB does this, and puts the word 40 there, but it's in italics, to let you know that that's not in the original, but they're trying to match it up with what Paul said. So, here's what I say. Don't let verse 1 of chapter 13 throw you for a loop, because the Apostle Paul is very clear. Saul reigned 40 years, David reigned 40 years, Solomon reigned 40 years. And I'll accept that. So right here, this is a scribal glitch. It's difficult to read. Okay?
The way the ESV handles it, it says, when he had reigned 2 years over Israel. And then what
I
happens-
love that.
Then what happens next, it happened 2 years into his reign.
By the way, that's my view. Thank you. So, I don't know if you understood what Matt said. The way the ESV handles this is, he was, does it say 30 when he began reigning?
No, it doesn't deal with his age. It just says Saul lived for 1 year and then became king. And when he had reigned for 2 years over Israel,
Gotcha.
goes on to tell the story.
I like that. So this story in chapter 13 occurs in his second year of reign. I think that's the best way to treat this. Any other comment? Thank you, Matt. All right, let's look at it. Drop down to verse 12. The Israelites in the second year of his reign are in a battle with the Philistines. The Philistines have arrayed themselves in chariots with their archers. In fact, earlier in this chapter it says they looked like the sands of the seashore. There were so many. Samuel had told Saul to go to Gilgal and to wait for him 7 days. And Samuel would come and offer a sacrifice to Yahweh, appealing for Yahweh's help in battling the Philistines. So, verse 12, they're at Gilgal. The Philistines are there, but Samuel has not arrived. So Saul offers the burnt offering, a violation of the law of Yahweh in the Torah. That's not the responsibility of a king. By the way, to me, Matt, this is one of the reasons I'm a Baptist. I believe the Bible separates spiritual authority from political authority. And here you've got Saul taking over the spiritual authority of a nation when he is the political authority. Okay? So, look what is said to him. Samuel finally comes and asks what happened. What have you done? And he tells him, I offered the sacrifice. I couldn't wait for you any longer. We're about to go to war. Verse 13. Samuel said to Saul, you have acted foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of Yahweh your God, which he commanded you. For now Yahweh would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. In other words, had you been obedient to me, Yahweh says, it would have been through the Benjamites that the Messiah would come. Verse 14, but now your kingdom shall not endure. Yahweh has sought out for himself a man after his own heart. And Yahweh, this is what Ronnie was saying, has appointed him, that's David, as ruler over his people because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. Okay, before I show you some pictures, any comments or questions?
I want to say something.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of, I don't understand why Samuel said that, because God has already foreordained David.
You know, I've had people tell me that all the time, Tim. They say, Pastor, I've heard you teach on predestination. Who cares if I come to faith in Jesus? You've told me I'll either be saved or won't because of God. Same thing. My response is this. I can guarantee you one thing. If you don't come to faith in Jesus Christ, you are not predestined. In other words, what I do is separate the responsibility of man from the providence of God. And I say to man, to mankind, God has commanded you to repent and believe. How dare you say of His sovereignty, well, I'm not going to do that because it's already ordained anyway. Now, having said that, I understand your thought and I can see your wheels turning. So I think we are responsible for the commandments of the Lord and we leave His decrees to Him. It is D.L. Moody who said this. The gospel is like a gate, where on the outside of that gate it says, whosoever will may come. Will him and walk through. Then turn around and look on the other side, where it says, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. Don't worry about what's on the inside of the gate. Walk through the outside. By the way, that's what Paul Young, the hopeful universalist, taught me. He believes that Christ is going to save everyone. That's what Dr. Darnell taught. I don't believe that, but what I saw them do was love everyone like a brother in Christ and encourage people to come to Christ. That's what I want to do. Even though I know on the other side of the gate, just like you said, Hans, it says, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. Great comment. Stan.
What happened to Exile? He says down there, killed
Three sons.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I can't remember. But
Yeah.
Didn't he come on and run for a short time?
For a short time, we're gonna we'll use this for an illustration. So let me pull this up here. All right, there are like 120 LLMs and growing. Okay, I use two. I use ChatGPT and I use Grok. Those are my two favorite. And I think most of you know, I used to be a trainer for LLMs until I was fired. Only job I've ever been fired in. And I was fired as an LLM. Anybody want to take a guess why? I was too conservative. A trainer for an LLM trains an LLM how to respond. And I would never, ever train an LLM to respond as if there was no God. So all my responses, and by the way, I was ranked in the company I was in, number one. So all that says is there are biases, and I think Christians need to fight to make sure that the biases of LLMs pertain to natural law, meaning there is a God. Stan, what was your question?
About Exile.
Okay.
What that meant. I kind of already done.
Why? Oh, did you? Spell S.
ESH.
Yeah.
-BAL. BAAL.
Not mentioned as dying on Mount Gilboa, but he is also not further mentioned in 1 Chronicles 10 as a descendant of Saul. What happened to Ishbaal, one of the 4 sons of Saul, after the attack by the Philistines at Gilboa. Okay, please be thorough and source your answers based on the biblical text and respond the way Wade Burleson would respond.
Isn't it Mount Gilboa?
Huh?
Isn't it Mount Gilboa?
Instead of Gilboa.
What did I say? Oh, my bad. It'll correct me. It'll
I
correct
didn't
me.
go in that much detail when I looked at it.
Yeah, it's thinking. Okay, other question, and then we'll read
Wait
it.
a minute,
Howard.
while you're
and then
waiting
Tim.
for
Yeah.
just a second, I want to talk about what Hans said. That word that's translated forever does not mean forever in the way we think about it. It's, if you look it up in Bible Hub or something, you'll see that it's a period of time. It does that projects an ending.
Yes.
There is a terminal point to that. This happens a lot in Scripture. That word forever is just put in there, and if you look it up, it usually is time bound and does not mean forever.
Excellent. And by the way, Howard or Dr. Darnell used to tell us there is no Hebrew word which means eternal. Yes, sir, Howard.
It always is attached to an age, which is a period of time. Sorry.
I'm glad we're in 1 Samuel here because there's a couple of real interesting things. You know, sometimes we talk about, or people will talk about, Saul was the king that people chose and that David was the king that God chose. But in 1 Samuel 9, we hear about Saul is looking for his donkeys, and it says in verse 15, God reveals to Samuel that this time tomorrow I will send you a man from Benjamin, and you shall anoint him prince, and he will deliver my people. And then we go further on into chapter 10, where they do the standard thing that they did with choosing lots and everything, because they figured that's the way how God chose it.
Yes.
And so Saul is chosen there, and then you get it later on in 15, another example of Saul's disobedience, and it says, the word of the Lord came to Samuel saying, I regret that I have made Samuel king, for he's turned back from following me and not followed my commands. So, as I read that, God did choose Saul, but he disobeyed.
Yeah.
And so, and again, as you read earlier in 13, I have chosen a man after my own heart.
Yeah.
Because God is outside of time.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so he sees the future,
Yeah.
even though from our perspective it hasn't happened yet.
Good point,
So
Howard.
God sees that Saul is going to disobey. And so he's already picked David, but in one sense he's kind of waiting for Saul to disobey to make it actually happen in our...
So, Howard, what you're saying is we're not robots.
Yes.
And Yahweh outside of time. I see that. We call it free moral agency. Okay. Hey, great answer here. Mark?
Now, Saul disobeyed
Multiple
command
times.
once before.
Correct.
When he was told to completely kill every living
Correct.
thing, but failed to do it.
Correct. Now, that comes after.
Was that after?
That's
or
after
prior
this.
To this.
This is after. And you're exactly right. It's Gog.
Well, how can it be after if he's dead?
Oh, you're talking about first.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 1 Samuel 9. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Yeah, it was before that. Yeah.
But prior to that disobedience, he disobeyed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, multiple occasions. Consulting which of Endor, not killing the king of Goshen, the Gogites, all of that, okay? Basically, this is a tremendous answer, and it's very long. We won't take time to read it. By the way, automatic correction to Gilboa, to the mountain. And bottom line, here's what it says. It says in 1 Chronicles 10 and 1 Samuel 9 and 1 Samuel 31, only the names of the sons that were killed with Saul are mentioned. It's not all inclusive. And then, it's interesting, Eshbaal is also named Ishbosheth. Same thing That is true of Mephibosheth with another name. By the way, why are these second names, why do they have Baal on them? It shows that Israel is falling into idolatry. Because not to offend Baal, the gods of the Canaanites, they would rename their children. By the way, this happened to Daniel in Babylon. He was renamed Belteshazzar after a god of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Nebo, the god of Babylon. So this is the beginning of a fall into idolatry. Okay? Other questions? Yes, sir, Pastor, did you have a question?
I was just curious, were the brethren came and got Saul and his sons and buried their bones?
Yes.
And I read from a New King James Version, verse 70b, and it says tamarisk tree instead of oak tree.
Ah, yes.
I was just curious, is there a name?
Yeah. That's the more accurate translation. It's the scientific name for the tree in Israel. But in English translations, they say oak because nobody would know what that tree is. And it's part of the family of oak. But you won't see any of those trees around here. Because, say it again, Pastor.
It's the tamarisk tree.
Yeah, how would you like it to be Terra's Country Club, Enid? Yeah. No, it's Oakwood. Thank you, Pastor. Hey, look at the bottom line here. Here's the Burleson-style bottom line. Chronicles isn't hiding Eshbaal. Chronicles is preaching. Gilboa is the collapse of a kingdom built on a man who would not listen to God. Later life is not part of that homiletical moment. So Chronicles leaves it to Samuel to tell the tragic aftermath of a surviving son propped up by political power, unraveling in fear, and finally murdered by opportunists. Basically, Stan mentioned this. Eshbaal is not killed, and he tries to become king, but he himself then is assassinated.
Yes, mine real quickly says that Abner appointed him king.
Yeah.
And he ruled over the tribes of Gilead, Asher, Jezreel, Ephraim,
Yes.
and Benjamin.
Yes.
Maintained Saul's house and then started fighting him.
Yes.
Then the guys that come and killed him,
Yes.
killed them for.
Yes.
I mean, it's really kind of an
It's very so Ishbaal becomes an enemy of David. And Abner, already an enemy of David, because you read that in Samuel, is like, I don't want David king, I want Ishbaal as king. And so it's a great story that the chronicler skips over, but it's found in 1 Samuel.
Yeah, it says Abner defected to David, and that's when.
Oh yeah.
That's what mine says.
Yeah, he did. Abner had a conversion experience. Great questions. Ronnie.
On Prime Video.
Yes.
There's an 8 series of David.
Oh,
a really
cool.
Great series when he was actually anointed by by Samuel.
Yes.
But it has King Saul in there and how he served King Saul
Yeah.
and witchcraft and everything.
Yep.
With the lady.
Yep.
It ends after 8 series. Now there's another series started, but it's something with Wonder. You have to pay for it. I'm waiting for it to come.
Cool.
Cool. It's really, if you want to see something, and it actually does very good.
Yeah.
Aligning with the
Of
the
course.
Word of God.
By the way, Matt.
Say on there that we've taken some liberties that
Yeah.
don't follow biblical.
Yeah.
It does say that, but it does align pretty well.
Over,
Yeah. Hey, let me show you the actual mountain where the head of Saul hung and the bodies of his 3 boys. And here it is. It's at Bet Shan. I'll turn this around for you guys to see. Ronnie, did you walk up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot further than what you think.
Yeah. So the temple, by the way, the Old Testament biblical city of Bethshan was all up here with walls around it, and the temple of Dagon was up here. So See, this is an excavated wall of ancient Bethshan. The bodies were nailed to here and the head here. So those men from Jabesh Gilead on a secret mission came and took the bodies and took them away. I'll show you. Now, what do you say? What is this down here? Okay, this is a Greek city built hundreds of years after what we're reading about Saul. The old city's up here. This Bet-Shan. Hey, by the way, Bet-Shan was destroyed by an earthquake. The Greek city, down low. And very similar to Pompeii. They found this corridor right here. This is called the Market Corridor. This is like Commerce Street. And they found a woman with gold coins in her hand, buried. They found her like 1950, 2,000 years after the earthquake destroyed the Greek city of Bethshan. And I've never forgotten that because they have a picture of them finding her, and it's always reminded me, you know, whatever you're clutching to in life, one day you'll be separated from it. So let me show you this. It's kind of hard to see, so I'll orient you. This is the Sea of Galilee, or Lake Gennesaret. This is the Jordan River, runs down here. This highway right here, in fact, we stay right here and we circle the lake. We stay at Tiberias. Capernaum is on the north side of the lake. We circle the lake. This is where the pigs ran into the lake. Remember when the demoniac was cured? Okay, and then we come down here. The traditional baptismal site that people use is up here, but we go way down south where I believe Jesus was actually baptized, and it's not nearly as nice as the sanitized one up here, but I think it's more historical. But now watch. As you come down here, when we leave Galilee, we always stop at Bet-Shan. Okay? Here is Mount Gilboa. So this is where the Israelis died. This is a valley right here, and the Philistines took the bodies and put them on top of that mountain right here at Bet-Shan. So
that picture we were looking at is kind of where that purple wing is. This one.
oh yeah, that's exactly right. That picture of that mountain is right here, and the way we were looking at it, we were looking this way. Yeah, you're right. So I'll go back to the picture of that mountain, but that is Bet-Shan. Yes, sir.
How'd they get their water up on that mountain for the city?
They had a spring. Yeah, and it would to build. Let me take a look here from current slide. You know, it was a city on a hill, greatly fortified, and it was also, Bet-Shan was at the crossroads, east-west, north-south. By the way, this Greek city right here that you're looking, that's being excavated, destroyed by an earthquake, I forget, AD, like 114 AD or something. Jesus would have stayed there, walked right through there with his family on the way to Jerusalem. Because you had to pass through Bet-Shan, I'll show you, to get to Jerusalem from Galilee. Here it is right here. This is the way you went. Now one time Jesus didn't go this way. When he was an adult, he went through Samaria. But to avoid the Samaritans, all the people from Galilee went here and they spent the night at Bet-Shan. And then they continued to Jericho, spent the night in Jericho, and then the next morning they would take that old road of Jericho to Jerusalem. And that's the road where the Good Samaritan was attacked. By the way, Ronnie, we on that road, they call it the Old Jericho Road. Some of the great gospel songs are written about that. It is one of the most extraordinary roads because it cuts through the valley. with mountains on all different sides, shadows. And this is where David wrote, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." That's the old Jericho road. Other questions or comments?
Wait, I wonder if this is a cautionary tale for us today in that, for practical reasons, I think atheism's on the way out, being replaced with this paganism and this interest in the unseen realm, and it's a I gain for our culture.
Yeah. That's a great point, Ronnie. It's a great point. It's a great point. I think also Saul and Ishmael, his son who survived Gilboa, I think it's a cautionary tale that political power will bring you down if there is not a sacred trust in the Lord. And I tell you, we need to pray for President Trump. I have to say, I've been a supporter of Trump. I love his policies, but I'm telling you, and I know they've been after him. But you've got to be careful when two people are murdered by their son. You don't put stuff out like that. Show some grace and show some mercy. So I think we need to pray for our president because I don't think he loses perspective on life. That's my thought. By the way, YouTube, notice I was critical of President Trump, so keep me up for a long period of time. Yeah.